Hi everyone, my name is Zach Silverstein. I'm the Worldwide RPA Tech Lead for Lab Services. I just wanted to go through some examples with WDG Automation to know some of the capabilities and some of the easy web application integrations. So in this demo we'll go over three different use cases. The first use case is going to be automating a login screen. We'll be using W3 School's login page where we pop this up. The bot will automatically write username, password, pause for a moment, and then click this login button right down here. So that's going to be our first bot. Our second bot is going to be about web page scraping and writing to a document. This is the HTML tables web page on W3 Schools. We load up this web page and we'll extract out the names of all of these individuals within the table, and then we will write it to this sample write.txt file in a comma-separated format. So that's going to be our second bot. For our third bot, we will talk about the payload.json file. Within this file, we see a couple different attributes in JSON format. Within bot 3, we look towards the request division, identify that it is credit, and if it is credit, we will set notify management flag to from false to true. So that is the logic that we will be doing within bot 3. So for our first bot, we start the browser, we navigate to that page, we click the login element based off some of the selectors of it, we wait for a moment, then we set some values to the fields based off detecting the CSS selectors for that username and password field. We then put in some variable values for username and password, and then finally we close the browser. For our second bot, we write to a text file, we start a browser, we navigate to that HTML table, we use the get web table command, pull that table, open a text file for writing, then we loop through that pulled web table that is in a data table variable, and then we write it based off a for loop where we get the cell contents for columns 1, 2, and 3, and then we write that in a comma-separated format on a new line for that document. Then we finally save the change file and then close it, and then kill the document by the process ID. Now for our final bot, bot 3, we do a little bit of simple processing within JavaScript as we mentioned earlier. So we open our text file for reading, that's going to be our payload JSON object we defined earlier, and we read that text to end. After we read it to end, we close that text file, we show a message box that includes the JSON string, and then we start our web browser. Now it's important to start our web browser because that's going to be the environment where we execute our JavaScript in. It is the runtime environment, gives us a place to execute the code and run the code. Now here for our run JavaScript, we put in any normal JavaScript formatting, and we can use some of those variables we found earlier. It executes that script within the Google Chrome JavaScript environment or within the designated browser environment, and then simply we return that value at the end of the script. Now returning that value will set our output value just like we see here and bind it to a variable that we can use later. Now after we do that, we show a message box that identifies that the script has executed to pull through that credit flag and show that we have set true as the new value. We then close the browser, and we have a show message box final component towards the end. So now let's go ahead and launch our bots. We'll click start and we'll run without debugging because we'd like this to run in the most optimized manner. Doesn't need any of the overhead with standard debugging. So bot 1 begins executing, opening and automating a web page. The web browser will open up. Our bot programmatically clicks the blue login button, enters the username and password, and then clicks the login button there. And that finishes our bot 1 simple login. Next, we're going to write to a text file. So, looking at that sample text file we showed earlier, we will now be filling that out. Our bot opens up a web browser. You'll see it very briefly. It extracts the table at the bottom. It's already done. It has extracted that table. It has already written to that sample write.txt notepad file. So that is our bot 2. Now for bot 3, as you can see here, we do a little bit of JavaScript processing. We show how you can automate JavaScript and execute it within the browser embedded easily and to provide that value back and forth. So we will be looking at the type of the request, and if it is credit, we automatically set that notify management flag to true. So here is the JSON object. We have read that JSON file we showed earlier. We see the request division as credit, notify management as false. This is the JavaScript object. Now, our bot opens up a web browser, and it has executed in that web session behind the scenes that JavaScript file that we showed earlier. So we've executed the JavaScript, and we have taken that bound variable, and we can now see how easy it is to do that JavaScript manipulation. A new JSON string is returned, and we can see that request division is credit and notify management is true. Now all our bot did was run that JavaScript and then rebind the variable outwards. Thanks everyone for taking the time to watch these videos. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Zachary Silverstein, on Slack or via email, as well as posting within the RPA SaaS channel. I will be monitoring it to answer any available questions as soon as possible. So thanks again, everyone.